Welcome to the Keiser Report. I'm Max Keiser. Late Sunday night, WikiLeaks tweeted, WikiLeaks didn't lead the Panama Papers, so most docs will not be released and you won't get a searchable database. Okay, let's hear more. Stacey.
Well, it was quite late breaking, so this is a little bit of a rushed job. But here's the WikiLeaks tweet. WikiLeaks didn't lead the Panama Papers, so most docs will not be released. So a few newspapers, including a paper in Germany, which, by the way, was actually, it was given its first license to operate by the U.S. military post World War II. And The Guardian have these Panama Papers. So these are some documents. 11 million pages, 2.6 terabytes. So I don't actually have a hard drive on which I could download this data, but still, this information is being selectively leaked. The Guardian itself says they are only going to release some of the material. They're going to maintain the privacy of some of the people involved. So we do know, however, so I'm only going on what is printed in the press, is here's a list of the 12 leaders of nations around the world whose names are listed as having some sort of offshore account. The Panama law firm set up these accounts, but actually most of the actual offshoring is done either in the U.S. or #1 British Virgin Islands, or actually here in London. So a lot of the actual entities are set up in London or other various British entities. But you see the president of Argentina. So remember Obama last week went tango dancing down in Argentina with the new leader, who is a right-wing, you might call her, certainly right of center, new leader. He's got an account there. The former prime minister of Georgia, Iceland's prime minister, the ex-prime minister of Iraq, former prime minister of Jordan, former prime minister of Qatar, the former emir of Qatar, the king of Saudi Arabia, the former president of Sudan, the UAE president of the Abu Dhabi emir, former Ukraine prime minister, and the president of Ukraine. So mostly U.S. allies, but all the UK papers, how to hide $1 billion. Putin.
What?
He's not listed in, actually The Guardian, this is The Guardian photo. They do note that he's not once mentioned in the 11 million pages and the bazillions of emails. Gawker and BBC, as you see, they show Putin. And it's all based on the fact that he has some friends who have some accounts there through which I don't know if it's like a corporate accounts, like, you know, they put some business deals through there. I'm not sure because this is all late breaking.
Oh, well, I've started to learn how to play the cello. I figure in maybe 5 or 6 years. They say all you need is 10,000 hours dedicated to anything and you can become an expert. And I think, well, just 10,000 hours of work and I too can become a world-class cello player. Apparently, that's the road to billionaire status.
But ironically, you know, in a global media space, there's a lot of competition in global media. And what I did receive a lot of tweets saying, Stacey, you're going to talk about this. Are you going to talk about Putin? Are you going to talk about Putin?
What about Yo-Yo Ma? He's a fantastic cello player.
But I want to talk about this. So people are telling me, will you talk about Putin? But like I said, here's Gawker, here's the BBC, here's the Guardian, Jerusalem Post, New York Times. All of them are talking about him, though he's not mentioned. For me, I would say the market opportunity, if you want to provide information that nobody else is getting, is going to any of these other 12 that this is the extent of their mention. They're not actually covered in any of the media here. So I personally would be interested in covering those that nobody is looking at.
Well, I mean, this fits into a story that we've been covering for a few years now, that there is, by the most accurate estimates, something on the order of $20 to $22 trillion floating around in offshore havens, enabled by law firms, offshore law firms, and the big four accounting agencies. And for that reason, I've been saying, you know, you got to buy gold bullion to give yourself some protection when this whole thing blows up. And this is just another step toward having the global Ponzi scheme of fraud blowing up, number one. And number two, this is a war of all against all. There are no sides. And the only way you can really fight in this war is via Bitcoin. As President Obama himself said, having Bitcoin is like having a Swiss bank account in your pocket. Very shrewd. Very true. That's why it's important for everyone, if they're concerned about having the global economy collapse due to over infraudment. I suggest Bitcoin.
Over-infraudment.
Over-infraudment,
so
Bitcoin. I mean, and it's all against all. My side is against, I'm taking my side against all. And that everyone should be all against all. There are no sides. There's all against all. Bitcoin is the currency.
Okay. Let's move on. So also, you know, all of those headlines, I showed you 3 of the headlines, and there are dozens and dozens of headlines with Putin's photo on it, because he is associated with some of the people, the Russians, who have accounts there, or allegedly.
I challenged Putin to a hockey game. He hasn't called me yet.
Oh, dear. Okay, so allegedly, some of these people have. I have not actually looked at a single one of the documents that have been leaked, so I don't know. But I want to, because he has friends there, he becomes the headline. Here's Rupert Murdoch's ex-wife, Wendy Deng, is dating Vladimir Putin, according to GQ. Here's another headline. This is from Business Insider. The world really wants this rumor of Vladimir Putin dating Rupert Murdoch's ex-wife to be true. This is from Business Insider. True or not, the public and the UK media, frankly, really seems to want the pair to be dating. Twitter could not stop buzzing about it. So why the UK media, as Business Insider noted, that they really, really wanted this Putin story to be true about dating Wendy Deng, though the Business Insider mentions there's no physical evidence that they have ever met or even spoken in the real world. But their evidence was that Wendy Deng had been on a yacht owned by Roman Abramovich, who they say is Russian and a billionaire and knows Putin. So there is a pattern of creating huge headlines on anything to put a photo. Maybe it's because of those topless photos Putin did, but putting a photo of Putin on the front page of the newspaper sells.
Well, you know, Wendy Deng is like the Cleopatra of our age. All the top dogs want to get in under that tent, find out what's going on in that area for some reason. She must have something special. I can't imagine what it could be. I mean,
there's some photos of her on the bikini in St. Bart's, but also I want to, one more thing before we move on to the next story is that no U.S. names in Panama Papers leak. Why not? Oh, by the way, The Guardian, they mentioned that the only thing they're covering regarding the Panama Papers, and it shows you their mindset, the tattletale mindset. They only, in the millions of documents, they only did a search for those breaking U.S. sanctions. In a global free trade world, they want to be able to tell Department of Justice, look, these people broke a sanction. They traded with Iran, or they traded with Iraq, or they traded with Sudan. So they only did searches for Sudan, Russia, Iran, Iraq. They only did searches looking for people who they could probably get the U.S. Department of Justice to impose sanctions.
Yeah, and is the Rothschild's name mentioned in there? I mean, they're
yes,
the kind of the puppet master of puppet masters.
I think they are listed as one of the service providers of entities in the U.S.
I mean, look,
the
there's only 3
top
countries in the world with banks that are not controlled by the Rothschilds: Russia, Iran, China.
Yeah,
and this is the end game now.
So they are mentioned.
They got their work cut out for them.
But they also mentioned the reason why the U.S. Citizens are not listed in there is because of the 2010 U.S. Panama Trade Promotion Agreement. There's basically all the data going to even this firm goes to the U.S. as well. So if you would want to do something dodgy via Panama, that seems a crazy thing. But there was another leak that is now being pushed off the front page by this. And there was another leak, and that was IMF plots new credit event for Greece. Neoliberalism does not give a bleep. Part 2, this is from Paul Mason. So there was a conversation, the transcript of a phone conversation between 2 IMF sources. And basically, they were plotting a credit event. They needed a credit event, a financial crash, to cause people to do what they wanted. The
credit event is code for act of financial terrorism, right? Essentially,
that's what Paul Mason does say. But it was interesting. Also, late Sunday night, while all this stuff was breaking, Christine Lagarde suggested that Greece is responsible for leaking this phone conversation because it happened at the Hilton Hotel in Athens that this phone call happened, and they allege, it seems that they're alleging that Greece is the one that released this information. So the IMF, of course, you know, they actually want some write-downs on the debt. It's the EU that doesn't want write-downs on the debt. So the IMF is ironically a little bit more on Greece's side, but they want a credit event to force Germany to the table.
Well, it proves what we've been saying on this show for years, and my discussions with Yanis Varoufakis, who resisted me on this point time and time again. I made the point to him that the Troika, the IMF, the ECB, and the other members were maliciously and almost sadistically using financial derivatives to bankrupt Greece, to make money, as they did on The Big Short. Remember The Big Short? Firms on Wall Street were profiting from destroying the mortgage market and the housing market.
Via offshore vehicles, I might add. When the Senate hearings, remember all the Goldman Sachs sacks of poop, they sold via offshore vehicles, mostly I think in the Caymans.
Right. And so Greece was the victim of another hit job by bankers using credit events, which is code for acts of financial terrorism. Greece was worth more dead than alive, because the entire economy leading up to this was only worth maybe $250 billion, which is within the range of a Wall Street hit. And I've been saying this all along, and now this proves what I've been saying, and it shows the IMF and Christine Lagarde are assassins. They're financial assassins. This proves it. I can say this without any fear of any blowback whatsoever, because now it's in the public record. She's a financial terrorist, full stop. There's not going to be any blowback on this. She'll never, she's proud of it. She's got little marks in her bank account at all the countries and people she's destroyed.
Well, it only provides content for newspapers and television programs, all of these leaks always. Remember the 6,000 HSBC names in the Swiss leaks? Nothing happened. Well, listen, this conversation was between Paul Thompson, who's the IMF's chief negotiator, and Delia Velculescu, who's the head of the IMF mission in Greece. And she said, I agree that we need an event. He's the one that first suggested we need an event, but I don't know what that will be. And Paul Mason says, let me decode this for you. An event is a financial crisis bringing Greece to default, close to default. So we've mentioned that over and over. We saw that in India when they elected a leader who was the wrong one that the international markets didn't want. We've seen it every time before TARP, when Congress first denied TARP, and then the markets crashed, and then all their constituents called and said, pass TARP, and then,
All right, well, we got to go, but remember, it's all against all, except for Max and Stacy. Our love keeps us together.
Well, don't let this conversation be leaked.
Yeah, don't let anyone hear what we just said. All right, well, we got to go for now, but stay tuned for the second half. A whole lot more.